it up. Got to give it to the GOAT. You know why? Because that's respect.
Yep.
You're going to go ahead and you're going to pay that respect. You're already seeing that ain't the level of respect that Carson Wentz is coming in here with. Hey, Carson, come in here, get a jersey, and show us you can play. That's what that says to me, first and foremost. Secondly, yes, he can get back on track, but not on track the way that I think a lot of people are hoping or thinking that he may. I think putting him in a position where it's game managing, making sure that you take the pressure off of him to have to be more than what people think he is going to be the reason why he has that type of success. He's not a world-beating quarterback, so do not treat him as though he is. And if you put him in that type of position where he can just manage the games, do what I tell you to do, trust what I'm telling you to do, trust what we're game planning to do, which I think that's what Reich will do, I think that he will have a fine season. I think he'll have a successful season. He's not an MVP guy. He's not MVP of the league. He's not a Pro Bowler, in my opinion. But is he someone that can have a successful year and lead his team to a successful season? Yes, absolutely he can.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, LeVar, on Michael Pittman Jr. I mean, and now they had a conversation, and it seemed like it was cordial and fun, and it was all love. But just the fact that he wouldn't give him the jersey, and he's only worn number 11 1 year. He was number 6 in college, right? It's not like, oh, you know, my dad wore 11
right.
when he played in high school, or that's a special date to me. Like, that was not the greatest of starts. Right, you're right about that. But I'm with you that I definitely think Carson Wentz can turn it around in Indianapolis. I expect him to. I'm not saying get back to MVP level, which he was at in 2017, but I do think he can be a legitimate franchise starting quarterback and over the next several years maybe make some Pro Bowls. I know it's tough in the AFC. They got all those quarterbacks, but I think he can get to a pretty high level. Here's why. Number one, Frank Reich, you mentioned him. We all know now he was the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia when Wentz had that MVP caliber season in 2017. And what people are saying is that when Reich left to coach Indianapolis, Wentz didn't really trust anybody else in the building. He didn't really listen to anybody else on the coaching staff. And so now I think he's got a certain trust of Reich that's going to be reestablished. Secondly, those guys stayed in touch reportedly over the last few years. They share a Christian faith, so they seem to have a good relationship. So I think that will be critical as well. And one thing Reich did was he helped Carson Wentz with his mechanics. From his rookie year to that second year when he played like an MVP, Reich changed his mechanics. And if you watch Wentz last year, a lot of those mechanical errors and flaws that were early in his career resurfaced again last season. So I think that's another thing Reich is going to help him with. You got the running game, Jonathan Taylor, the young guy.
Yes,
you got the receivers. Bring back T.Y. Hilton. Paris Campbell, if he's healthy, that'll be a big help. They got a top 10 defense. I mean, this is a team that was playoffs with Phillip Rivers. If Wentz can just be a little better than Rivers, they should be a playoff team. Remember, Rivers only got sacked 19 times last year. Wentz got sacked 50 times in Philadelphia in 12 games. 50 times was the league high in just 12 games. So he should have a clean pocket. I know they have to replace their left tackle who retired, but all of those things are set up for Carson Wentz to have some success. And success being a solid franchise quarterback type year, get them to the playoffs. I still think they're a second-tier playoff team this year in the AFC, but I think that will be a really good season for Wentz and the Colts.
Uh-oh, I'm on an island here again. Gentlemen, you know, I do a lot of gambling stuff for Fox Sports, and I like to watch the markets. And what happened when Carson Wentz landed in Indy? The markets barely budged, okay? Barely moved. The Colts are tied with the Browns, 4th best odds, okay, to come out of the conference. And that's not a lot of respect to Carson Wentz. And why is that? Well, how did he handle adversity? Okay, LeVar, you played in the NFL. You saw a lot of guys, ups and downs, ebbs and flows. How did Carson Wentz handle adversity last year when he got injured again in the playoff game against Seattle, and then they draft a quarterback in the second round? Carson Wentz essentially pouted the entire season. There were reports that he didn't talk to his coach, his head coach, for 8 to 10 weeks. They just weren't speaking. I can't fathom that. You know, maybe you get in an argument with your wife or your sibling and you don't talk to him for a day or two. How does Carson Wentz not talk to his coach for 8 weeks? Like, this is a guy who moped and his head was down and he pouted. And, there are reports, some really good reports out of the Philadelphia Inquirer, that Carson Wentz just didn't like the play that was being called, so he just said, I'm not doing that. Like, is this the kind of guy you want in Indy? I know maybe he reunites with Frank Reich and they bring back the magic of 2017. Like, Chris, we don't often talk about people and say, hey, man, that guy can be as good as he was 3 years ago. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Like, again, you said it. The left tackle has to be replaced. T.Y. Hilton, we don't know what the status is. That division is going to get a lot tougher with Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence coming to town. And the Colts stumbled a lot in division last year, 1-5 against the spread in the division, facing a bad Texans team, okay, a pretty bad Jacksonville team that won 1 game. Like, they just weren't very good in the division. I liked Phillip Rivers last year. Believe it or not, Carson Wentz is a downgrade from old man Phillip Rivers. I like everything I saw out of Rivers last year. He carved up a pretty easy non-conference schedule. Wentz will not have the same coming for him this year. I mean, listen, I'm out, LeVar, on Carson Wentz. I'm sorry. You know, like, listen, everybody loves a redemption story, and maybe Wentz gets it right and doesn't get hurt in Indy, but I'm not buying it. I'm sorry.
It's the balance. And the AFC is tough. It's top-heavy tough. So when you look at what Carson Wentz is stepping into, he struggled. You talked about them 50 sacks he took, 50-plus sacks. He struggled in what was not perceivably, it was the worst division in the league. None of them could win, and you're still struggling. You're going into a situation where you're not going to play against teams where you have the opportunity to be poor and still have a chance to win. So looking at Carson Wentz taking those sacks, I'm not just putting that on the team, Broussard. I'm looking at Carson Wentz and I'm saying, wow, if the team was a part of him getting those 50 sacks because they couldn't block or keep anybody out of the backfield, I'm at least giving 50% of that blame to Carson Wentz as well. So if I'm giving 50% of that blame to Carson Wentz and 50% of that to the team, I'm looking at the Colts, and if I'm Frank Reich and I'm the offense coordinator of this team and I'm the offensive line of this team and I'm the running game of this team, I am saying we have got to make sure that we do not become a predictable, one-dimensional team, because if it comes down to us having the pass, that magnet of getting sacked, I've seen it 100 times. I remember Patrick Ramsey. People won't remember who Patrick Ramsey is, but I played with him in Washington.
Statue, right?
And once he became that magnet for getting sacked, it almost becomes a part of you. It's almost like you embrace it. Like, I don't want to get hit. I don't want to get sacked. I want to be able to stand in and throw the ball. But for some strange reason, you attract it. It's like, it's going to happen. So some of them sacks, that might not be avoidable. So you got to assume that I have to go into this season knowing that we have to figure out how to deal with the bad of Carson Wentz if we are to enjoy and benefit from the good of Carson Wentz.
I would agree, certainly, and it's the same thing with Russell Wilson. I mean, some of those sacks are on these quarterbacks that hold the ball, try to make the hero play and make something out of nothing. I'll give you that. I wouldn't go as high as 50%, but certainly some of that is on Wentz. He'll probably be sacked more than Phillip Rivers. And look, while I expect a turnaround, there are red flags, and you guys have brought some of them up. I have not been in – I have felt like Carson Wentz has lacked the intangibles of a great quarterback. I think the greatest quarterbacks have great physical tools or very good physical tools, but great intangibles. Tom Brady, what makes him the GOAT? The intangibles. Joe Montana, another guy in that conversation. The intangibles, not just their physical ability. And so I do think Wentz has lacked those. You know, there's always reports, J-Mac, you're talking about reports of some of the locker room not liking him, not thinking he listens to guys, thinking he knows it all. But I think, if Carson Wentz has not been humbled, then he's never going to be humbled. If he hasn't been humbled by a team that just gave you a $130 million